So yeah, thanks for joining me, Dennis. Let's have a chat mainly about Villa's kind of current Champions League form and kind of the correlations to when you won it back in '82 and Villa being back in the Champions League knockouts for the first time in decades. How special is it to see them back holding their own in Europe's top competition?
Well, it's been a long time coming, 42 years actually,
Yeah,
so we never thought it would happen really. And when I say we, I'm talking about the ex-players and also the fans,
yeah,
because there's plenty out there who remember '82
mm-hmm.
and have been open for an opportunity to be in Champions League again. Well, as it was European Cup
European
then.
Cup.
So
Yeah,
Champions League is really, when you think about it, it doesn't. They should take champions off it and just call it the European League, as they wanted to do a few
yeah,
years back. But it's not. It's great. It's great to be in it from the point of view of the football club.
mm-hmm.
And the most ironic part of it was the first game they played, which was against Bayern Munich.
Yeah,
Going back in '82 when we played them in the final and we won 1-0, lo and behold, the draw comes up and they've got Bayern Munich now, the first game. Now, everyone would have thought, well, this is probably one of the games in that group and that
mm-hmm. Yeah,
they're not going to win. But they had a great game on the night and a great goal by John Duran, which was one of those special goals that you see sometimes in a game of football. And that was like, he's collected the ball just inside their half and he's just in the keeper off the goal line and he's chipped him. So a great start, and the fans were up for it. The fans were really, really into that game that night, and because it was the Champions League, so many wanted them because so many Villa fans weren't there in '82,
yeah.
and they've been waiting 40 odd years to get into it again and see if they can win it again. So for the club, it was a great piece of work because I felt the previous season when they were in the Europa Cup, they should have won it.
Yeah.
They should have won it, and they could have been the first the first trophy really of note for quite a long time.
Special. And kind of what have you made of Unai Emery's impact at the club when he joined? I think there was obviously some expectation that Villa were obviously on the up, but kind of the instant impact to have the success that he's brought so far. Kind of what have you made of his impact at the
Well,
club?
he's come into the football club and has really turned it round from the point of view of this is a man who has been to finals in Europe before. He's won leagues as well over in Spain, and he's always put together teams that maybe not the best from the point of view of the way they play, but the way they're organised has been the mainstay of what's happened since he's joined the football club. Because he's got what he's been able to do, I feel, is he's been able to bring players in that have actually fitted into the system that he wants to play. And that's what it's all about. You go back to '82 and 81 when we won the league. And the big thing about our team was it was a team that played for each and one another. But we all had our little jobs to do. We all knew our jobs. And this is what Uni Emery has done. He's actually brought to the football club what I would say a system of play, which is now enabling the players to function. Because you sometimes get players who don't function in the system.
Yeah.
Although they might be great footballers, because they're not in a system that now sort of maximises their skills, what Emery's done, he's actually done that. He's got players there, he's looked at them, and he's given them a role, and they're playing that role, and they've been playing it really well. And this season's going, it's a tremendous season really for them, because I don't think many of the Villa fans would have expected, uh, you know, 2 years on after them coming into the football club,
Mm-hmm.
that they've got a team of quality like they have at the moment.
And on that kind of signing the players of the caliber of Marco Asensio and Marcus Rashford, what does that kind of say about where Aston Villa are as a football club with their
Well,
good
well,
talents?
if you look at it, it puts them up there now with the teams like Man City, like Newcastle, like the Arsenals and all that, who they have they have rather wealthy owners, and those wealthy owners, right, have lots of attachments throughout the world, and they're able to pull sort of sponsors and stuff into the football club, which normally wouldn't be there.
Mm.
and so by having that connection, because you've got you've got the people who own a football club, one's from Asia and one's from America.
Yeah.
So you're hitting two massive continents, and they're bringing people in from those areas, yeah, who normally wouldn't be attached to an English football club.
Mm-hmm.
But these guys now, that they know they've worked it, they've got to understand. So what they're doing is they're bringing money in, but they're also bringing money in through the fans,
Mm-hmm.
because there's been a big restructure about how the ground is now divided up. There's a lot of corporate hospitality now, and it's a very American system, because the president of Villa now, he doesn't call himself a chairman, he calls himself a president, which is Chris Heck. He's come from America, and he sees how it works over in America at a big club, and he was very successful in the last club he was at over in America, and he's brought that same kind of razzmatazz Americanization to the football club. And one of the things that he's brought is he's trying to develop an atmosphere before the game starts, with all these flamethrowers and these fireworks going
Banners
off.
and stuff.
It's not my cup of tea,
Yeah.
but it's, and a lot of fans just feel to themselves, well, you're spending a lot of money on that every game. Do we really need it? Could you cut out the fees that we're paying? In other words, our season tickets and buying a ticket on the day. So he thinks it's good for the club, but a lot of the fans who you talk to would rather be able to get a cheaper ticket than have all the razzmatazz. But the razzmatazz is there for a reason, and that's trying to generate the atmosphere before the game, and it's becoming more prevalent now around football grounds, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when it does get a crowd going, because the only thing that gets the crowd going is the players,
yeah,
and their performance on the football pitch. So if you don't get performance on the football pitch, all the fireworks and all the razzmatazz is irrelevant, So, but what they're doing now is they're putting the money into the football club to enable a manager to go out and bring players, as you just said, of the calibre of Rashford and Asensio.
Yeah.
Difference is, though, the interesting thing now is that, are they transfers or are they loans?
Well, they're both kind of, I think Asensio, are they both options to buy? I think
Yeah, but that's just
like,
that's the caveat that goes with borrowing them.
Yeah.
I think they're borrowing them, because Rashford now, you look at the internet, Man United want a big fee for him.
Yeah.
Will Villa want to pay that kind of money? Asensio, he's at PSG. He'd be on good wages. Yeah, is he on bigger wages than what they are at Villa Park? Can Aston Villa afford him? There's a lot of ifs and buts about those two players. But the thing is that Aston Villa were able to go out and get them.
Yeah.
And add to what they've already got.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a bonus for them now going into the second half of the season.
Yeah, and I guess it depends on the success of how Villa do this season, if they can get top four in the league or do further in the Champions League, because you get the money pool from that to be able to go and pay and buy Rashford, Asensio. But I think there's so many players like Rashford, Asensio out there that have seen what they've done at Villa, and I think people now see Villa as view them with high regard as a club they can go and sign for.
You're quite right, Ollie. I mean, people want to play in Europe.
Yeah.
And it's strange that one of the players that Villa bought in the transfer window, Hallam, is it, from Borussia Dortmund?
Yeah.
The Dutch player, Marlon, yeah.
Yeah.
He got dropped from the Europe, and he came over. So, it's little things which, as a player now, if they read that and think to themselves, well, that wasn't very nice to give this guy saying, we want to bring you in, and we're still in Europe, because that's where he wants to play. And all of a sudden he gets dropped from it because they want to bring two other players. So it's an interesting thing that goes on in football now, is that players want to play in Europe. And to be in Europe, you can. What's happening in the Premier League as well is that more and more teams are getting into Europe now, because of the coefficient that goes with where teams are finishing in the Premier League, in the Europa and in the conference, and that gives you a coefficient which then might give you more. And they're talking about teams maybe down to number 11 in 11th place in the Premier League being in Europe.
Yeah, I saw that.
You probably read about it, and it's if you've got half of the Premier League now playing in Europe. Is that going to be good for football? I don't know, because if you go a long way into these competitions, you're playing a lot of games.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember Newcastle last season when they were in the Champions League, and they were robbed really of one game when they played PSG, and he got penalty. PSG got a penalty in the last
handball,
minute
wasn't it?
when
Yeah.
Newcastle were 1-0 up, and after that they didn't win another game, and they were out of it. And so, but some teams like Tottenham as well. They were in Europe last year, and some people have this thing about, well, is there too much football going on because you're never getting a break? But that's the reason why you have a big squad.
Mm-hmm.
You go back to 1980, 81 when we won the league, we used 14 players.
It's crazy, isn't it?
You couldn't get away with 14 players now for a whole season.
Yeah.
And you just couldn't get away with 14 players.
Mm-hmm.
And so the big squads are needed, and they're able to sort of name 25 players start of every season to those that will probably play in the first team or have an opportunity to. So that takes a lot of money, takes a lot of revenue. Yeah. But being in Europe, the extra money that's coming from Europe as well, plus television rights, plus being in winning at home in the Premier League. Positioning is everything now in football from the point of view of how much you earn, and the higher you earn, everyone wants to finish in the top four, because that does give you a realistic chance of being in the Champions League. And the way it's been reformatted, it's going to give people an opportunity to make more and more money. But it's not always the be all and end all for you, because what you got to do then at the end of every season, you have to figure out then how much more money you're going to spend.
Yeah, and what have you made of the new format? I personally enjoyed it. The new league style. Kind of what have been your thoughts on the new format?
I think after the initial start, I mean, I remember watching the draw and seeing that Aston Villa were in this pot, but then I was seeing they were playing teams from another pot, and I was, well, I thought they were in that pot, but they're playing teams from another pot. So until I got my head round it and realised, you're not just playing teams in your pot, you're going to be playing other teams. So once you got my head round, and then going obviously into the knockout race. See, there's always got to be a reward for those who finish in the top 8, right? But the trouble with UEFA is that top 8, they would have expected the likes of Bayern Munich, Man City, PSG, Juventus to be in that top. They didn't expect teams like Aston Villa. Now, whether UEFA see that as a good way, because they always want the top teams over the years. Those teams like Juventus who are winning, Bayern, who are winning their leagues every year. I mean, you look at PSG; they don't really have to put a team out. Sometimes before the game, like the last game they played against Liverpool, when they played Liverpool Anfield, they none of the players played who played then against Liverpool. So and they also can get games cancelled, whereas we can never do that here. It's as if in the Premier League is saying, no, we don't do that. You've got to get on with it. But in other countries, they're quite happy, like particularly France, and say, okay. But you see, PSG are so far ahead, they're going to win the league again. It's almost a nonsense, that league, from the point of view who's going to win it. We have a little bit more understanding the fact that, well, because Man City have struggled this year, that we're going to get someone different. But once Man City get back to who they are, Ollie, they might be back up there again and win it all the time. Do we really want, as far as I'm concerned, as a fan, do we really want the same teams at the top all the time? That's the big question for fans. The fans who support those teams say, yeah, we want that.
Yeah.
The teams who don't support them say, no, you're making a mockery of football because you're cheating the system, just like Man City have done. So you can't, there was a time when, like Leicester City won it. They won the Premiership. But UEFA didn't want Leicester City to win it because they went, who's Leicester City? Yeah. So there's a problem with football where you know, UEFA want the best teams
playing against each other.
Again, playing against each other and in the top leagues, because that's where they generate, the interest in the game from the point of view of the fans.
Yeah, and I think that's why when the format came out, everyone was a bit like, "Oh, this is just so they can have more big games playing against each other." But I think actually how the leagues turned out hasn't gone in UEFA's favour because, like you said, teams like Villa have managed to get into the top 8, and it's kind of upset. I think what UEFA actually wanted from this new format, which has now actually turned into a better for the
you
viewers.
look at it because you see when you look at it, you think Liverpool won it and they're knocked out,
Yeah,
right? But they played against PSG, who normally would have been in that, so PSG might have been a bit later in the tournament for Liverpool, but they came a bit early really in that first knockout stage.
Yeah.
So from Liverpool's point of view, all that effort that went into winning it, so so next season when they're in, which they will be in Champions League, they might just decide, well, we only need to win 5 games and we can be in the middle area.
Yeah.
So when we go into the next round, we might find that we're in a different side of the equation, and we might have an easier run. But you don't know, you see, because you don't know who's going to win.
No.
You've got no idea who's going to finish in the top 8. But it probably next season, I would imagine that it'll probably get back to some kind of normality, where the teams that normally finish and qualify under the old system will be in that top 8. Yeah, there won't be any interlopers who are going to jump in there. But again, that will all depend on finances, people how much to spend. The teams that have got the money can do. Because what we've got to remember about football now is that football is becoming, and this is the thing that I like to read about football and where it's going, but I like to read about who it is that own football clubs. Because the owners of football clubs now, they're not businessmen like we used to know. You go back to Doug Ellis when I was playing. He looked like Mr. Ron Bendel, who was chairman then. These are businessmen in Britain, right? What you're finding now is that the people who run football clubs don't live in Britain. They live abroad. Yeah. And so the game's changing from the point of view of who owns it. And that side of it for me is where the Premier League have got to be very careful that they don't let the best teams run away within the the Premier League or the FA Cup and all that. The same ones win it all the time. But the only way to do that is by having these restrictions on the teams. But are they coming down hard enough on them to stop them doing it? Personally, I don't think they are. So we've got football clubs that are owned by states now. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, wealthy hedge funds, wealthy equity companies now who are spending money on our game of football. And there's a lot of money in those, you see. But they're not going to go for everyone. They're not going to come into every team and try and make it better. But the thing is that you've got to keep a watch on football, because the person who's going to lose out is the real fan. The guy who hasn't got £100 a ticket every week. Yeah. He wants his ticket to be £50. Even that's expensive, to watch a game of football. Yeah. But to actually find £100 every week, not only for him, but for his wife and his 2 kids, that's an awful lot of money from anyone's wage packet. But then you get the corporate side of it, the wealthy ones, well, they're the ones who've got the cash, and they're quite happy to sort of get involved with football that way. But the real fan, going back to the Clough days of the early after the war and everything, those people are disappearing now. The guy who would spend 2 and 6 to get into watch a game of football and stand all morning to get in there. We've got to be careful in this country that we don't go too far down the route where all our teams now are owned by wealthy outsiders, because what we're doing now is I just feel we're selling ourselves short all the time from the point of view of our even the country is.
Yeah, and I think at Villa, there's been a lot of talk around Chris Heck. Like at the start of the season, my mate had his season ticket moved because they built in loads of hospitality seats. And obviously, there's all the talk of how expensive he's pricing Champions League
Yes.
games are. And I think you have to be careful with such a famous club like Villa that you don't start pricing fans out of the game, because there's no way that the average Villa fan can afford to go to every Champions League
You're
game
quite
this
right.
season. Yeah,
You're quite right, and that is the talking point. Is how much and success again this season. Is obviously finishing the top four, and if they can manage to win a trophy, what happens next season then? What kind of increases do we get? I was just reading this morning how football clubs are already sending out letters to fans for next year's season tickets, and they're already quoting 5%, 8%. Yeah, so that's more than what people are getting paid in a wage packet. So there is a concern for the real fan, but as far as the club's concerned, if they fill the seats with anybody prepared to pay it, that's all they care about.
Exactly.
See, I'm a great believer that current board, the people who own current football clubs don't care about the fan.
Yeah,
the real fan. They make out they do, but they don't. And it's very clear to me, that is happening all round, or not only in England, but I mean, see in Germany, you can't own a football club like they do here.
Yeah,
because you can only own, you can have people can have 49, 51%, and there's 49% then belong to the fans. Now that system now means that clubs can't just do what they want and put prices up, because they've always got to go through the fans. Now all football clubs have advisory boards, but the clubs don't listen to them.
yeah,
And I know that because I get letters from the advisory board who get in touch with me and tell me what's going on, and they don't listen to them. So they're not listening to them. I have them. So what will happen in the end? The advisory board will say, "Well, we'll just forget it. You just get on with it, and then you just get that." But your real fan is then disappearing. But the fans want to be there, and with success, they want to be there watching it. So I said to some people the other day, like, they got PSG now coming up in the quarter final. I said, have you been to the bank to get a loan? You know what I mean?
yeah.
Because people want to go home and away. But you probably find, I mean, going to PSG now, I don't know what they can charge as they shall, but this is a massive club, and then they're coming back to Villa Park then, and it's all going to be, is there going to be a premium on this game? I should think there is, because it's a quarter final, and that's where the clubs sort of find the money, is when they can charge more. They don't have to charge the flat fee. They've got different games. So, Man United, are they a premium game? Well, this season you say no, but in past season you say yes. So who becomes a premium game and who doesn't? Yeah. But money is talking very big in football nowadays.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because we're getting people who've never been involved with football before finding a way into it. Yeah. Because I remember. I know we're going off the track a little bit, but I remember just not the last round, but the round before the Champions League. I watch it on the telly most of the time. I've got BT, and so I go to the Villa games. I've been to all the European games, but I watch the other games on BT, and I noticed that the sponsor of the Champions League for that period, those home and away games, was a company called Zing Dong. So it's a Chinese company. Now, I've never seen a Chinese company involved before in a sponsorship, right? Of that we sponsor the Champions League. I've never seen a Chinese company. This company is an e-commerce company. Well, we know what they are, yeah? They sort of span loads of places, e-commerce, right? So again, it's a way where they're getting into football, but they're coming from a country which, in a way, we're not liking for a certain reason. We've got sanctions on them, but like Saudi Arabia, but they're coming in. They're coming in, and they're coming in through football. And what's happening now is that the fans, they just sort of turn a blind eye then what other people are demonstrating against. And I know it's political when you get into that, but football fans have to be a little bit more discerning when they don't just think that it's okay for countries to take over your football club.
Yeah.
Especially when it's the people now who, in a way, sometimes put an extra pound on a gallon of petrol, which it comes back and haunts. Means we've got to pay more money for. But if they want to be part of football, then we need to have a bargaining chip where we say, well, you can't do that. You're getting enough from football anyway. You've got an opportunity that you've got to be kind to us now. But there's no, it's not a two-way thing. It's a one-way thing. And I get really, I don't have a voice in that. Not many of us do. You got to be a reporter, someone who can put get his teeth into it and really have a go. The only problem is you got to watch out. You got to watch your back then, because not unless everyone agrees with you, Ollie, and goes with you, you're going to find yourself sort of out on a limb. But football's got to be careful that it doesn't go down a route of having too many foreign owners, because it will have a detrimental effect on the way fans see football, particularly when they want to go and watch it.
Yeah, and I think just kind of to round that up, the biggest dilemma for the Villa fans is they want to be there for the success, but when the success happens, the prices go up, and I think that's.
This is what the fans know now, though. They know this, the European Cup final that we played in Bayern, people bought a ticket. It included the ticket price and the coach from Birmingham, to Rotterdam, £35, right? Yeah. You see, the difference is massive. The final of the Champions League will cost you an arm and a leg. It will mean you're going to have to go out, especially for the ordinary fan. Yeah. He's probably going to have to go and get a loan because they want to be there. Fans want to be there. Everyone talks about I was there. And this is why you get a lot of fans now who go home and away, home and away, home and away. They just want to feel as if they want to be part of the continuous sort of success. But then if it doesn't become success, they'll reflect back on what they've done and how much they spend and think to themselves, was that worth it? But to the fan it is, because they like to talk about it.
Yeah. And then move on to kind of there's a lot of talk about the atmosphere that Villa are going to face when they play in Paris. And I wanted to ask, what was the toughest ground that you had to visit in that 82 Cup run? Was there? Do you remember like a really intimidating atmosphere from that
run? It's only the press who say it's an intimidating atmosphere. The players themselves love it.
Love it, yeah.
Whenever I played quite a few European games in the UEFA Cup before the Champions League, and grounds and fans never really bothered me, and I don't think it bothered any of the players in the team, simply because we know what a job we need to do, and for 15 minutes you just have to make sure that your team doesn't score. And once you get past that 15-minute mark where the crowd are really up for it and really shouting and want everything to go their own way, once you get through that, the fans start to get a bit irritated then and start, sort of thinking to themselves, hey, this isn't working out how we wanted it to. So the atmosphere is there, but it can be quelled quite easily by the way you're playing. And the way Villa have been playing this season, they've been taking it to get to other teams. They've been playing really good football. So you get this situation where they start to quell the crowd, and I think it was more it's the places you go really that are more intimidating. Like when we went there, we went behind the Iron Curtain twice. We played Dynamo Berlin, and we played Dynamo Kiev. So we were behind the Iron Curtain. So you go to those countries, especially Berlin, and there's a wall detaching West Berlin from East Berlin. And from that point of view, you see the contrast between how we live and the way they live. And when you get there, that's the most dismal thing about it, is that you see how these people are living their lives when they could be if that wall wasn't there. and they could be living like the other side. So that kind of thing was more. That kind of thing was more made more of an impression than actually, playing the games.
Yeah.
Stadiums are different now. A lot of the stadiums we played are very open, no roof on them. Today everything's like super, super smart. Fantastic stadiums you play in, generate an atmosphere themselves. But that's great. You want to be in that atmosphere. You don't want to. You don't want to. You want to be in the ground, and this is why you get this razzmatazz before games at Villa Park now. Is to get the fans up and ready for the game. But all the other team has to do is for 15, 20 minutes, just don't give that team or Aston Villa a chance to score a goal, because that's what generates it even more then, you see. So intimidating thing really being in the quarter final, because you're getting so close.
Yeah.
Because that's the thought you've got now. You're getting so close to the final, and you're only like 4 games away from the final, quarter final, and then semi final. Yeah, and so that would be more. That's where you start thinking now.
Yeah.
That you've got a chance, but you've got to try and put that behind you as well, and think to yourself, take one game at a time.
Yeah. And like I know if I asked Morgan Rogers if he's just focused on the PSG game, or he's thinking about the possibility of a semi-final matchup against Madrid, he's going to say that he's focused on PSG. But do you think that some of this squad are going to be thinking about the possibility of past that PSG game, or do you believe that they're going to be totally focused on that PSG game?
We never felt that.
No.
We never had that. We always felt that. Take one game at a time.
Yeah.
Because you just never know. I mean, you look at the last game against Bruges. Bruges had a player sent off after 20 minutes. It changed the game totally.
Yeah.
It actually changed the game totally. The game then was all over because Villa were 3-1 up.
Yeah.
It was 0-0 at the time. And I thought, well, they're not going to score with 10 men, not against a Villa team that's playing well.
Yeah.
So if something happens like that in a game, and it's so easy to happen in these European games, because referees are sometimes a little bit blindsided by the rules in Europe and the rules that we play under in England. So as a player, you have to be very careful of the way referees interpret the game. Like I watched Man United play against who did they play now in the
Real Sociedad.
Yeah, there's 3 penalties.
Yeah.
None of them were penalties. Not one of them was a penalty. From my point of view, but they were all soft, very soft, what we call very soft penalties. In other words, was it really a penalty? Did the player make the most of it to try to gain an advantage? And I always say a player always tries to gain an advantage by pretending he's been kicked harder than he was.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, you see. But no, I think incitement by the opposition is a lift, really. Because you want to shut them up.
Yeah.
So it never affected any of us as players, but we took one game at a time, because it's 2 legs. You could lose the first leg 3-0, but as Liverpool have shown in the past, you can win the next one 4-0 and go through. So it's never over until that second leg is finished. And this is what you just got to do, is focus on the one game. Because Villa have got other games, as they say. You've got Preston in the FA Cup. So if you win that, you're at Wembley for the semi-final, and that's one step away from Wembley again. So you get an opportunity to play at Wembley twice. For the second time, you might be playing for the actual trophy. So there's a lot to play for. There's a position in the league as well they've got to play for. So you can't keep jumping and thinking, we could play Real Madrid in the semi-final. Well, no, you don't want to be thinking about that. What you want to be thinking then is about, well, we could be playing Man City or Nottingham Forest or whatever in the semi-final of the FA Cup. Forget it. Just stick with what you've got and just go with it. And if you get there in the end, you'll feel better for it. If you're overthinking it, you're not going to feel good for it if it doesn't work.
And how crucial do you think experience is obviously going to be for this tie versus PSG? It's going to be the biggest game that the majority of this Villa squad have ever found themselves playing in. How do you see them coping, especially some of the younger lads?
You see, PSG are a different team this season. They haven't got the three stars that play up front, who from a lot of people's point of view and a lot of us players, ex-players who watch them, they had three of the laziest forwards ever. But when those forwards had a chance to score a goal, they could really turn it on and score goals from any angle, any position. But they've got rid of them now. And what they've got a team. They play as a team. And this is the big difference this season for PSG, is that, they came into the season, they got rid of all the stars, and now they've been, working on a system that's going to give them the opportunity to keep progressing. I think it's because they don't play tough games every week in, not like our Premier League is the toughest league of all. We've got the teams all the way down, yeah. Ipswich could beat any team on any given day if the ball went for them and the goalkeeper didn't give silly balls away and everything like a lot of them do. But PSG play in a league which is like, it's full of ordinary teams that probably in our country would be playing in the Championship.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be playing in the Premiership. So we've got a tough league and our players have to be at it every game. With PSG have a chance to relax sometimes and just forget about the fact that we don't have to put the same effort in. But they're playing much better this season, and they showed in the first leg against Liverpool that they're capable of overturning a good team, a very good team as Liverpool were, and making Liverpool look quite ordinary. And it was only because of the great saves that Alisson made, really, that kept the team in the kept Liverpool in it, and gave them a chance in the second leg. So this is a big game. This is where you test yourself. The big games. See, yeah. When we played against teams we knew nothing about. We played Valor from Iceland in the first leg. We played Berlin. Know what we did? We know no one knew about. We played Dynamo Kiev. There's a couple, obviously international players, but we know nothing about them now. But you know everything about teams now. So going to play PSG, everyone in Villa will know exactly what PSG mean, to this Champions League, and but also Villa themselves will be feeling good because they've got here, and they've got here right by playing good football and winning games, and they've got a good manager who understands winning competitions. So the combination could work. But it might not work.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Let's see.
We don't know.
Looking forward to it. And then kind of finally, just to round up, I read somewhere online that you failed to get your shirt back from the European Cup final win. Can I expand on that story? What happened? Did you swap it with someone and can remember who it was?
No, there was no. What happened, Ollie, at the end of the game is that quite a few of the players, if you noticed in the pictures that I've taken of that, quite a few of the players swapped on the pitch, right? The rest of us who didn't, because we wanted to go up and pick the trophy up with our Aston Villa shirts on. I mean, how daft would it look if I'd have gone up in a Bayern Munich shirt? It would have looked totally out of place. Anyway, so when we got in after the game, the guys had all changed at swap. They just had the second European shirt. We had two shirts. Yeah, one was long sleeve, one was short sleeve. And so the guys who swapped, they just put the Bayern one into the bags with the spare shirt. Those of us who didn't swap, our kit man named Jim Paul, he said to me, "Look, give me your shirts and I'll take them next door to the Bayern and I'll swap them for the ones who didn't swap." So he took our shirt and then he came back with the Bayern shirt. So my shirt now went into with a pile of others into the next door. Now, many years on, my nephew, who wanted to try and find it, and he started this probably about 6 years ago, trying to find my shirt. And we've done everything we can, really, to find that football shirt, and we can't. And listen, whether someone's got it and doesn't know they've got it, but he's been in touch now with every player from the Bayern game, and no one has it. So where it's gone, we just don't know. So whether someone picked it up and took it home with them, we don't know. Whether they took it home with them and then I don't know what they would have done. See, it wasn't a Liverpool shirt. It wasn't a Man United shirt. It wasn't, Juventus shirt. It was an Aston Villa shirt. Well, they're questioning themselves. Well, who the freaking hell are Aston Villa?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They've lost to Aston Villa. They had the 3 leading goal scorers in that tournament that year. Yeah, Hunis, Breitner, and Rummenigge. Yeah, and between them, they scored over 20 goals. They couldn't score one against us. So they're thinking they're coming into the game against Aston Villa. We've got no pedigree. Yeah, we've won the 5th Division Championship for the first time in 70 years the year before.
Mm-hmm.
So no pedigree really. And then we got to the final of the European Cup, and we've won it. But from a share point of view, it's just a total mystery to my nephew why we can't find it, because we've done articles in German, in the German papers. I had a reporter do a piece for me on that. Craig, who's my nephew, he's been in touch with people over there in Germany as well, and you could say, well, okay, let's go to the football club and see if now have a look around in the storeroom or something, and maybe that shirt might be lying around.
Yeah.
But the odds of that, the odds of just one shirt, remaining, is ridiculous, really. Yeah. So, see, Peter Witt's shirt turned up because what happened was that Peter's shirt was actually hung up in the buying museum, right? Anyway, he swapped back. He did a swap with Augenthaler, and he did a swap, and he got a shirt back. Yeah, he did that. But that was probably the only one that they put up. The rest of the ones were divided up into the players. So if it surfaces, we were very lucky. But why we can't find that one is a big mystery, because because I've still got the number 3 that I picked up.
Yeah.
So after the game, when I went to pick up a shirt from the pile that Jim Pollard brought back in, I just picked one up and it was number 3, and I've still got it.
Wow.
I've got it because I'm open that if we can find mine, that we'll do a swap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's why I'm keeping hold of it at the moment. Is that if my nephew Craig can find it, then I'm quite happy to do a swap. Yeah, if the person who's still got it is a buying person.
Yeah.
Because in those days, you see, you wouldn't have sold it in those days. It's only many years afterwards where you'd find out there might be, people who collect. I mean, collecting football shirts now is massive.
Mm-hmm.
Especially signed and everything, especially shirts that have been worn in a game as well. They can be quite pricey, but and that one, you see, there's only 2 of those shirts ever made, a long sleeve one and a short sleeve one. No others made, you see. Yeah. So a bit of a catch if we can find it, from that point of view.
Fingers crossed it turns up.
I don't at the moment. I don't feel like we're ever going to find it. So. But you never know. Someone might find it. Okay, if people do that, you see, they put it in a bag, put it somewhere, and they're just never looking again. They put it in a loft or put it in a garage, something like that, and it's just they just don't know what they've got half the time. Especially people like Bayer, they were winning lots of things at the time, and a lot of their players were international players as well, so they'd be getting international shirts and everything. So they would have had a lot of stuff now, which what we call memorabilia. So it could be somewhere, but we just can't find it.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your time, Dennis. Taking way too much of it. Thank you.
No problem, Ollie.
Okay.